Hey everyone, welcome to the Bridgepoint Podcast. So glad that you came back today. We've been away for a while. We're really glad that you've joined us. And we have a very special guest today, David Lachowicz. David, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Matthew.
Yeah, I got to know you at the Indiana Dunes Great Banquet.
Yeah.
And my children are extremely jealous this evening that I am with you and they are not.
I was actually a table leader for Christian, your son.
Yeah.
Just passed away to me.
His eyes went like saucers when I says, guess who I'm podcasting with tonight? And he's like, who, Dad? I'm like, David Lack. He's like, no way.
And what's so cool about this is the most time you and I have ever spent together. Our
Well,
first
yeah,
podcast.
Right.
Other than, we would meet at the banquets and we would talk, but there's so much going on there that there's not a lot of one-on-one time.
Yeah, so we asked David to come today because he has. I'm impressed with what God's doing in your life, but also because you have a real passion for seeing men succeed and not fail. Yeah. And we might call this podcast Fighting Failure. Yeah, you're involved in Fight Club. You're involved in different men's ministries. You've been producing some of the coolest little videos. And if you're not on David's video list, maybe you should be. Because frankly, brother, a lot of people push stuff to me as a pastor, and I look forward to getting your videos.
I appreciate
and my
that.
son loves them too. So it's like father and son are like excited about their videos from David, just in terms of the things that you're saying. So
how that all started, I was going to men's group at Grace Point Church, and we were talking about one of the biggest man killers out there, which is lust. And one of the guys in my group, Bruce, he brought me the book the next week. He brought this book to me, and it's called Clean by Douglas Weiss. And he said, this book is profound. You need to read it. And I started reading this book. And within the first 10 pages, I'm like, every man needs to know this information in this book. Yeah. So I'm like, I got on my phone. I started videotaping at like a minute, 30 seconds, because that's all my phone would do before I had to make 2 videos. And I sent it to my men's group because not everyone in my men's group was reading this. So that's how it started. And I was going through a really rough time about probably 4 months later, and I stopped doing my morning devotional. And one of the guys who I met through Fight Club, actually the first man that ever prayed over me, he said, what's going on? I know something's going on in your life. I haven't heard from you. Where's your devotional? And I said, well, I'm taking a break. And he goes, well, I'm going to come find you. It's Scott Whiskey. He said, I'm going to come find you. You need to start this up again.
He's very aggressive. And maybe determined. That's a better
And that's passionate. The definition of iron sharpening iron right there. I mean, when you're struggling, men are so prideful. Number one, they're not going to ask for help, but just go help them. If you know someone's struggling, go help them.
Just get out there and show the initiative.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Well, we talked about some of the things that were truly influential to you in terms of it's not seeing failure in your life, or rather seeing success through men's fellowship. Tell us some of the things that you've been learning in terms of engaging with men. It could be with in terms of victory over lust. It could be anything at all. We want to see. We don't want to be failures. We want to be successes, and we know that iron sharpening iron. You have to have that friction. You have to have those guys interacting in your life. You have to have that influence. So for me, I remember, my mother telling me, bad company corrupts good character.
Yeah.
And this is from 1 Corinthians 15. It's just like, it just gets thrown in there. I think it's 1 Corinthians 15. And so and I was hanging around with all these people, and they had pornography everywhere. They were way into immorality. They were into alcohol and drugs. And what do you suppose I got into?
Yeah. I was always that kid that needed a shorter leash growing up, because I wanted to see, I wanted to touch, I wanted to feel, I wanted to experience everything. And that the dark path is really shiny at first.
Oh, it looks so good.
It's so good.
Looks so good.
And I mean, that's the deceiver's way of sucking you in. Yeah. And I didn't realize till I started getting around other men through men's group at church, through Fight Club, that there's a different way. There's a whole other way to do things out there. And I can remember my first Fight Club kickoff. in Goshen, Indiana. And it's always at midnight on a Friday night, so you have no excuse not to be there.
Yeah, because unless you're like working the night shift or something, like hi.
And there's usually somewhere between 300 to 400 people at this kickoff, and I start to realize that everyone here is having a good time. Everyone here is here for something good, and no one's drinking, no one's doing drugs, and we're all talking about Jesus, and it was fun. I was having a great time, and that was the first time in my life where I realized there's a different way of doing things, and it's really attractive to me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember thinking back in some of my hedonistic days, thinking the top 10 stupidest things that I did in my life, I did with the company of corrupt people and under the influence of some substance.
Yeah, absolutely. Every
and
time.
I thought, what am I doing? And then I finally got around people, godly men, that were serious about their faith, and they were serious about purity, and they were serious about following Jesus. And I'll never forget, and I probably have shared this on this podcast before, but it goes to be repeated. I had these two guys, Patrick and John, and we just basically said, what does it take to grow spiritually? And we understood that what it took to grow spiritually is to spend time with men that have spent time with Jesus.
Yeah.
And to spend time with him together. And so we just said, when are we going to meet? And we were super busy, right? We all were having children, little kids in our lives. We all had full-time jobs. We were super busy, and we were just like, okay, well, the church is going to let us use the kitchen, so we're going to go down at 5:45, 5:30 every Wednesday morning, and we're going to make breakfast. And we made breakfast for each other. Yep. And while we made breakfast, we brewed coffee, made eggs, usually some kind of hash browns, because my friend Patrick's Irish, and he says you can't have a meal without potatoes. Okay, fine. And John and I agreed that you can't have a breakfast without some kind of meat. So we either had sausage or bacon, or in the East Coast we have scrapple. Sometimes we did that. So most of our listeners will not know what scrapple is.
Yeah, what is scrapple?
It's impossible to describe.
Okay.
I know what it is, but if I told you, it'd sound gross. You grind up. It's like pork. It's like pork, very very fine pork ground, and then some breadcrumbs and some spices, and it makes sort of like a kind of like a meatloaf, which is sliced very thin and then fried brown, and it's kind of peppery and delicious.
Okay.
So it's like an ancestor of meatloaf and sausage.
Recipe. I love to cook. So.
Oh, so do I. We can talk offline. I've tried to make it, and I can make almost anything, and I like the store-bought scrapple better, and that's challenging. So just anyhow, I'll tell you about it later. All right.
So you made time.
Yeah, I made time.
Yeah.
I made time to get together with these guys, and frankly, that's just the case of everything that's good in our lives. But I guess what sparked my wanting to tell about Patrick and John is that I actually realized I really enjoyed being with these men.
Yeah.
And they really helped me grow. Like we all figured out, we went around and said, hey, have you read the whole Bible? And not a single one of us had.
Yeah.
And I was like a graduate of Bible school.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? And they're like, you haven't? I'm like, oh, I've read lots of it, but I can't claim to have ever read it all the way through. It was always like assigned, you know what I mean? So I read more of the Bible than anybody else that knew me, right? But I myself personally knew that I had never fully read. And so we made a commitment. We said we were going to read through the Bible this year together.
Yeah.
And we've been doing it ever since for like the last 10 years.
And you were honest with each other.
Oh, yeah.
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 Like, no, I haven't. Like, even though most people thought you had.
Yeah. I mean, we had skip days, you know what I mean? We usually just played catch up. I mean, these two guys ended up being incredibly disciplined, so that wasn't a problem. And then we got audio versions of the Bible and the YouVersion app and stuff like that. So we started listening to it if we were behind, like on the way to work and stuff, which was great. Listening to the Bible was fantastic. So I guess I was really impressed by what you were saying. Like all these guys, they all wanted to serve Jesus, and it was fun.
The only reason we were there is for Jesus. Yeah. And someone said to me recently, and I was telling him about all these things I'm doing, all these things I'm volunteering at, and he said, I don't know how you people have time for this. have all this time for this? And I thought, I don't know how people don't have time for it, because that's first. If your time should go to that first, and then other things will fall in line. It's just the opposite way of thinking. A worldly view versus a kingdom view.
Yeah. Well, I'm convinced that a lot of people are spending an enormous amount of time on things that they just aren't adding up properly, like entertainment. Yeah. So like watching television or endless scrolling on YouTube and Instagram and these kind of things, which, you know, I tried to, someone told me I should look on this new platform, TikTok. Well, I had TikTok for about 2 weeks and I was like, I don't need this in my life, man. I don't need one more video of a girl taking her clothes off.
Yeah. Like,
sorry to be blunt. Well, you know what I mean? And and you can't not look at it. It's like watching a train wreck. Yeah. And TikTok's algorithm, if I'm wrong, you can hate me in the comments, okay? I think TikTok's algorithm is the longer you look at something, the more it registers that's what you want to look at.
Yeah.
So it's like impossible. You look at it and you're like, I should turn away. And eventually you turn away after like 3 seconds and then it gives you 10 more. Yeah. And I was like, every time I went on there, I was supposed to be like producing content on that platform. So I was trying to understand the platform. This is a little while ago. Yeah. And I was just like, no, I don't need it. I know. I'm not doing that. So I think people spend tons of time on social media, tons of time watching television, and they don't realize that they could be out having a podcast like you are right now. Or they could be at a Fight Club meeting, or they could be at a Bible study, or they could be inviting someone over for dinner. You know, they could be going for a walk in the woods.
I can't remember the verse it was that we just talked about it in men's. Yeah, exactly. We just talked about this in men's group the other night. It was a psalm, and it talked about, you know, when you're sinning and you don't realize you're sinning, you're so far into it, and you don't realize that you're not even doing good. You don't realize you're not doing good. And that verse really hit me, because the time in my life before I started following Jesus, after I started following Jesus, I saw the impact that I had on other people's lives, the impact that love can have on other people's lives. Like grown men brought to their knees, and it hit me so hard. All this opportunity wasted that I could have been loving on other people, helping people through something, and then that's helping you. I mean, you know.
Oh, totally, right? It's like amazing when you're serving and giving. I mean, Jesus said, right? It is better to give than to receive. And for years, I always thought that meant, oh yeah, okay, so it's better to give because when you give, then you're going to get something back. Like if I give you $1, it's blessed because I'm probably going to get $1.50 back, like God karma or something. Mm-hmm. I don't believe in that, but that's just a way of like, you know, retribution theology, you know, or spirituality, I should say. But it is more blessed to give than to receive is actually means exactly what it says. The blessing is in the giving. It's not in what gets returned. When we serve and give to other men, and when we live in fellowship and we don't live looking at our own navels, we're incredibly happier.
Joy, real joy.
Real joy. Yeah. Happy in the best sense, not in a shallow sense. You know, like you're actually you have satiation. You have significance and purpose. You're like, yeah, I love this person, and love is like this good in itself. Like you give to someone, you love them, and like you'll like, wait a minute, I didn't get anything out of this. I gave it away, yet I'm more satisfied than I've been than when I've had people heap gifts or whatever on me.
Yeah.
Bro, that's so cool.
I feel like I have an advantage on some people because I was an addict, that I followed that road as far as it would lead till I was completely broken, completely broke, completely loveless, completely shameful, completely lost. And you're going one more pill and I'll feel better. One more pill and I'll feel better. Well, like, you know, another year of one more pill, and then serving and getting that feeling of satiation, getting that fulfillment, realizing this is exactly what I was trying to do by putting those pills in my body, and I'm getting it through loving another human being. It's fantastic. It's fantastic. It set my life on a different course. lately. It's so powerful. I can remember my first Fight Club kickoff, and they're going through the rules and it's a 10-week challenge. Fight Club is a 10-week commitment. And some of the commitments are no alcohol, no drugs. And when they said that, I'm like, okay, I'm at a point now. That's why I'm here. I'm changing my life. Okay, no alcohol, I can do that. No drugs, I can do that. And then he says no pornography for 10 weeks. And my mind exploded.
You're like, I can't do that.
I never even heard of such a thing. And that, you know what that was? That was the first moment in my life that a light bulb went off in my mind that this might not be good for me. Pornography might be bad. And up until that point, I was so blind by the evil one that I didn't even realize what I was doing was bad. And I could remember. So I just completed my 6th chapter of Fight Club. I could remember that first chapter, the last night, because it ends at midnight. I remember holding my phone, and it's 11:59, and I'm waiting for it to tick to 12 so I could look at pornography. And I did. 12 o'clock, boom. That was my first chapter of Fight Club.
What?
I tell this story to other men. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I made it through the commitment, but...
And you're like, okay, good. I can go back to that.
Yeah. And so, 2nd chapter of Fight Club, 3rd chapter of Fight Club. Wow. Last year, I made it to 11 months free of pornography. Is my longest, and I stumbled. I'm currently at like 5 or 6 months. I'd have to look at my date, but it's almost a non-issue for me anymore. And I didn't think that was even in the realm of possibility in my life. And then you come to realize that anything's possible.
Sure.
Through Jesus.
Yeah.
I'm taking a class now. It's called the Pure Desire class, and they have a website, puredesire.com. It teaches you all about lust and lustful feelings and how to deal with them, and addiction and pornography. There's local churches that offer it here in Valparaiso.
Yeah, the one that I'm familiar with is Calvary.
Yes.
Yeah, Calvary. And I have friends that have gone through that, and it changed their lives. And
so I'm to the point now where I really want to dive in. I want to learn about this. I want to learn how this lust, because lust it affects all men, how it affects your brain, how we think about it, what are our triggers, so I can fight back. I think that the cell phone is just, it's the biggest assault on mankind in human history. For the deceiver, he's got this tool and he puts it in our hands, and we
you
can
need
have
it for everything,
everything. Yep. And if we don't have tools to fight back against that, we're losing.
Yeah, man. Wow. So tell me some of the things you've learned in your fellowship with other men and in this Pure Desire.
I've learned that you can't heal without talking about things.
Vulnerability.
Yeah. That's probably one of the biggest. Because when you first start venturing out and getting in and talking with other men, getting in a men's only group, you kind of feel it out, and you don't know how it works. You don't know that vulnerability is where the healing comes. So you may or may not talk about it. And not saying just showing up is half the battle.
Yeah, that's a good deal.
Being there, listening, participating, showing up. But I really learned that until I start talking about this, and then you realize that everyone,
that's 100% of us.
Yeah,
right.
Okay, you're a human, we're all people. We all have these problems. Yeah. And if Satan can make you think that you're the only one having this issue.
Right. I keep talking to people about this. I just read this book called The Soul of Shame. Remarkable book. And it talks about this vulnerability. And what the enemy wants to do is he wants to hijack our God-given desires and turn them into an addiction. And he wants to lie to us that if we look at an image or watch a video or pursue illicit sexual encounters, that somehow that's going to satisfy our soul.
Yeah.
And then we figure out that it's empty and that it doesn't work and that we're ashamed that we're still unsatisfied, and yet we can't stop because now we are going to go back to this thing again and again. Yep. And so you don't want to talk to people about it, right? Like, and so the devil has used shame since the very first day to make someone feel like they're worthless. And if you feel like you're worthless and you feel like your identity, like who you are, there's something lacking or wrong in you, then you don't want to expose that, because that you feel vulnerable, and vulnerability means you might get hurt, and so you try to cover that up. Well, that's shame is this compounding thing. It causes you to hide, it causes you to cover up, it causes you to posture and not really tell who you really are or what's really going on, and it keeps you permanently locked in a place of less. And then what the gospel says is that you're unconditionally loved, that there's opportunity for healing in life. And if you were to open up through connection and repentance, then you would be healed. And that's why we have to step out of the darkness and into the light. But it's so scary.
That's what is such an amazing part of a Fight Club kickoff experience, because there's 350 to 400 men all there for Jesus, and you don't have, and you realize I don't have to be ashamed about talking about Jesus. I don't have to be ashamed. Like that was the place that taught me how to worship. During worship with my hands in the air. I don't have to be ashamed. If I want to submit to God right now, if I want to raise my hand and praise God right now, if I want to shout, if I want to sing this worship song, like, it's not for you. It's for me, and it's for God, and I don't have to be ashamed of that.
Right.
And, you know, starting out in Fight Club or men's group, you feel that way in that group, because this is like a Jesus safe zone. But the more you do it, the more you go through your Fight Club assignments, the more it gets you out into the community, talking about Jesus with strangers, then you start to realize, like, I can do this. I can talk to strangers about this. And almost every time we've had an assignment where you have to talk about Jesus with a stranger,
right?
I can't think of one instance that it turned out negatively.
Really?
Yeah. And that's what I'm expecting. I'm expecting someone to be like, get away from me, or that's great, but I don't believe, or that's great, but I don't have time. It's almost I remember one time I was at Walmart, and one of our assignments was to recite this Bible verse to a stranger. And this woman's walking in. I say, excuse me, ma'am, my name's David. I'm in this men's ministry, blah, 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 blah. And I say this verse to her, and she goes, you know, that's really weird. My sister died a year ago, and that was her favorite verse.
Whoa.
And things like this are just happening.
It's like God moments. Like God is orchestrating these things. That's so cool.
Wow. I can't promote Fight Club enough. Fight Club has changed. Fight Club took alcohol away from me. I had more of a drug problem, but the drugs and alcohol went together.
Okay.
But Fight Club made me realize I can go places, I can do things without drinking. Fight Club took alcohol away from me. Fight Club took pornography away from me. It took drugs away from me. It has given me the opportunity to spend more time with my family. I've done all these projects with my nephews now, and I spend time with my nephews at holidays or birthdays or things, but, now I'm making a catapult with my nephews, or I'm making snow cones from snow outside, and then we color it yellow. So, cause one of the models of Fight Club is it puts deadlines to good intentions. I have good intentions of hanging out with my nephews. I have good intentions of teaching my nephews how to tie a tie. I have good intentions of helping my neighbor across the street fix her fence because she doesn't move around too well. And guess what? I just did all those things because it puts deadlines to these good intentions. And if you're looking for something new to try, if you're looking to, honestly, to see God work, if you need something to to reinvigorate yourself or something new to try, just come to kickoff. Fight Club kickoff is on a Friday night. You don't have till the following Wednesday to commit to it. Come see what it's all about. There's a whole carpool of us that we meet at Grace Point Church in Valpo, and we all carpool together out there.
When's the next one?
The next one is in February. I have to check my date.
It's going to be cold, huh?
Yeah, I can remember last spring kickoff, it was 12 degrees outside. It's always outside, rain or shine, outside, dress appropriately.
Yeah.
And they have fun and games. I can remember we were kayaking down this hill in the snow.
Nice.
And we have a worship thing, and it's a serious thing though. We have fun with it, but it's also it's centered around Jesus, and that is our focus. And that is our focus, is to get the name of Jesus and put it out into our community, because if we can make men better, then men can lead their families better. Then their families can go out into the communities, and now your community's better. But they say it starts with the man, and God made man first. He made Adam first, and we are supposed to lead. And if you don't know how to lead, how can you lead?
Right. Yeah, man. That's so. This is everything you're saying is so Captain Obvious, and yet it's so hard to access until we set aside that time and we get with other men and we say, Jesus, I'm going to be in your community. I'm going to listen to what you want. I'm good. And you know, I'm just hearing through, I've heard so many people tell me about Fight Club, and I'm not a night guy. Like, I usually want to go to bed. And since my heart surgery, I'm usually like really tired. By the way, this is the second evening activity I've done in 2 years.
Wow.
Like, I usually don't.
I feel honored.
Like, bro, for you, I'm coming out at night. Right, I try to do everything during the day, but I'm growing in my strength.
Yeah,
you know, so I might be able to pull off a Fight Club here in a little bit. I'm getting excited about what you're talking about.
Yeah,
so,
well, I mean, after the midnight meeting, it's all daytime stuff. You have your squad, and so it's in Goshen. So we have a squad in Valpo, and it's going to be anywhere from usually 8 to 20 guys, and we meet maybe every 3 or 4 weeks. But you have an accountability partner. Everything is, you know, you have a week to accomplish these assignments. And then we have an app on our phone. You have to post, 3 strikes and you're out.
Okay.
Throughout the 10 weeks, I mean, it really holds you accountable. There's a fitness part of it. There's a family part of it. There's a church part of it. And there's a community part of it.
It really kind of sounds like it's getting guys off their duff.
Yeah.
And getting them engaged, instead of sitting around. I mean, I guess this is not time for true confessions, but one of the things that happened to me is that I used to would tell you I never watched television, right? But now I struggle not to watch television because when I had my heart surgery, I couldn't even read. I am an avid reader.
Yeah. And
I would pick up this book after my heart surgery and I would look at it and I'd read for about a page, and I had such inner ear problems. Like, I don't want to be a complainer.
Yeah.
But like, I had so many complications after my surgery that I didn't even want to tell people about it.
Yeah.
I was going to bed at 7:00 at night, 6:30 at night. I'd eat dinner and I'd go to sleep.
Yeah.
I'd sleep for 11, 12 hours.
And this is your heart surgery?
Yeah. After my heart surgery.
Yeah.
And I was in a chair for 6 weeks. Right. And like, what did I do? I couldn't read. I watched television. And so, like, I just feel like I watch so much television, and now that I'm getting out more, it's like I'm getting off my duff. Do you know what I mean? Like, fulfilling your intentions. What did you say?
Puts a deadline to good intentions. Yeah.
The discipline of deadlines, good intentions. The fellowship of being around men that are serious about Jesus, and yet they're still having tons of joy in their life, right? Engagement with your family, purity, spiritual practices like worshiping, and hearing from God personally in prayer and devotions. Like, all these things are absolutely essential for a well-rounded life, and it's just truly super cool. So before we get further, I want to just pause, because in a normal podcast there would be sponsors, and in this podcast we do have a sponsor tonight. We have a sponsor, and I'm going to show people. This is the Alorico Productions that is based out of Bridgepoint Church, is going to produce a film called Detour, and it is a journey of someone's recovery from addiction.
Wow.
And it is being filmed right now, and it should be out this coming spring, I believe, is their target.
Yep.
And if you want to know more about Detour, visit Alorico's website, or you can message me on whatever platform you're listening on, and we will get you more information about that. We're very excited about this, and stay tuned for Detour the film. So it's going to be awesome.
Fantastic.
So yeah, it's you know, every person I think in their past has experienced things that people who are in addiction, okay, or people who are in some kind of behavior, that a habit or behavior that's unhealthy. These are almost always, I want to say 100%. I don't know this for a fact, but I've done a lot of reading. And from what I can tell, even the scientific community would agree with this. Like people who study this stuff, right? They would say the addictions and habits that are unhealthy are almost inextricably linked to some kind of pain or trauma that we experience in our past.
Yeah.
A lot of times, even as early as our infancy. And what ends up happening is when we get older, we experience certain things that assuage that pain, that trauma.
Yeah.
And usually they have some kind of drug-like form. So, for example, pornography, for me, assuaged whatever pain, covered over whatever pain I felt of rejection.
Yeah.
And so I lived in this delusion that I would feel better looking at pornography, right? Or I would feel better if I tried to act in line with some of my sexual impulses, right? And what I found is that it didn't actually help. It actually was empty, and I didn't get my pain covered. In fact, it kind of made it worse.
It makes it worse.
It made it worse.
Yeah.
And when I finally realized that, like, there were people that actually loved me, and there were people that would actually accept me, and that the reason why they accepted me was because of the love of God in Jesus, it changed my life.
Yeah.
And I did not want that in my life anymore. And yet the lie was very persistent, and the patterns in my mind, and I'm sure if we did a brain scan of you or me, you could probably find all kinds of neurotransmitters and stuff that were not operating correctly anymore because of the addictive behaviors. Alcohol, I was into alcohol and immorality and pornography. Like, this messes your whole system up. It messes your body up. It messes your soul up.
That's one of the things we're learning about now in this Pure Desire class at the church.
Grace Point?
No.
Oh, Calvary.
Calvary Church.
Sorry.
I don't know why I can't
Grace
remember.
Point is, you go to Grace Point,
I
right?
go to Grace Point,
Okay.
yeah.
And I'm the pastor of Bridgepoint.
Yep.
And so I've known someone who went to actually I met a bunch of guys who went to this Pure Desire at Calvary Church, and they had a great experience.
Yeah, we're learning about how your brain has changed, just like you're talking about when you're looking at pornography, or if you're putting a drug. Well, pornography, your brain creates the drug. You're not physically taking a drug.
Pornography, your brain responds to pornography in a very similar sense that your brain is influenced by methamphetamines or cocaine.
Yeah.
You have I believe it's dopamine. You have a dopamine dump. Yeah. And so when you, and by the way, this is the same thing when people look at their phones for likes on Instagram and Facebook.
Yeah.
That's a mini hit.
Yeah.
Okay. But pornography is like a big hit, and it makes your brain produce all kinds of dopamine, and then you are literally addicted to that, because without that you have a crash and you don't feel good anymore.
Yes, and it's not real.
And it's fake.
It's fake. It's this fantasy world, and I feel so deeply for young people nowadays,
right,
that have this phone and that have access to anything at any time, and it's not real. And it's not real. And when you finally get out of that fog, when you finally start to think clearly, once you're away from it for a little while, and you can think clearly,
right?
I mean, you realize the type of fog, the type of chains, the type of bondage that you were in. And I don't like bondage. I don't like vices. I don't like a
Right.
vice of any kind. I like to get out and run and move around.
Yeah.
And if something's
yeah.
holding me back, I need to know about that. I need to learn about it. I need to know what those demons are.
One of the things that was impressed me, and I've sort of known this, but I've heard a number of people talk about this, and most recently, again, it was reminded of this in the book on shame that I read, called "The Soul of Shame," and talked about the deepest. I think he stated, and he's a psychologist, medical doctor type guy, and he says one of the deepest desires of humanity is connection.
Yeah.
And the problem with pornography is that it pretends to provide connection.
Yeah.
You can get the same kind of sexual physiological stimulant through visual interaction of connection, except you're watching other people connect. You're not connecting. And then it messes your brain up in two ways. First, you're not actually connecting with anyone.
Yeah.
And so you're left feeling empty.
Yeah.
And so you have this euphoria in your brain, okay? And then you, at the end, don't have anything to show for that because there's no person to connect. So you have this double emptiness, right? And then this is really insidious. And I've been listening to psychologists and brain biologists, or I don't know what the right medical term is. Yeah. There's a couple of different people I've been watching on YouTube. And I think that they're doing research out of, I think it's Stanford in California. And basically they were talking about how not only do you not have connection, okay, but then you're wiring your brain to only understand sexuality as voyeurism, as observing, right? So when you go, let's say you go to have a healthy sexual interaction with someone, you don't know how to do it.
No, you have no idea.
And it doesn't feel good, and it feels awkward and weird, and you're like gross. So you run back to what's easy, and you're left with emptiness again. You don't have connection. And then, and just to go back to shame, you feel ashamed about this, and it crumbles, and you just go to downward spiral.
Yeah.
And so the encouragement is for people to be vulnerable and to say, I feel empty, I need connection. And what's really cool is, and I know we're talking a lot about pornography, which happens to be sexual connection, but we need connection in every area. We need connection with our brothers and sisters. We need connection with our family members. And men need connection, and they need not be ashamed of that.
Women live longer because they're connected later in life. And men, we feel like, oh, no, I don't need anyone. Well, guess what you do? Because women are living longer because they hang out with each other.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Right. And what I'm fascinated about your experience with Fight Club, and I'd like to just sort of ask a little bit about this. I mean, tell me about the connections that you made with men that you never thought were possible.
I have a group of men now that I can go through my phone and I can call them. I can talk to them about anything. I can talk to to a group of men about anything. If I have any type of problem, I can lean on these people, and I know that they will be there for me without a doubt for any issue. And I don't think you can do that without Christ. I don't think you can lay yourself open in front of other people and be completely vulnerable and say, I need this help. I'm struggling without Christ, feeling that safe. I think He provides that. God provides that.
Yeah.
So, and not only that, like I said, you have your guys that you do Fight Club with, your guys you do men's group with, that now you're in a group of guys. Now they know when you're struggling, even when you're not talking about it. Now you have, it's almost like your safety net. You got your group of guys that knows you enough now because you've been spending time with them that can, maybe pull you aside, maybe in front of people. Hey, what's going on?
Yeah.
You're not yourself today. and sometimes just listening to someone, just being there for someone.
Mm-hmm.
And men have different issues than women. And if for any women listening, I'm not saying anything against women, but men are different, and men need men to talk about men things.
Yeah, we're 100% pro women, but there are some things that men need to connect with other men over.
Yeah.
And this is why, we've been such a strong proponent of men's ministry at our church. And, I have a wonderful guy in our church. His name is Alan, and he was trying to get men together on Saturday mornings to pray and to be vulnerable with each other. And, there was fierce resistance to this because everyone thought that they had their own best way of doing men's ministry. And finally, be it COVID or whatever, just kind of cleaned things up and created a pathway for Alan. And Alan said, let's have a prayer meeting. So we had like 2 guys show up to the prayer meeting. I mean, it was abysmal, right? Yeah. And then just last weekend, we had 20 guys show up. And guys are coming out. People are showing up in all sorts of condition. We had one guy show up drunk.
Yeah.
And he thought we were going to like berate him. We put our arms around him. We prayed for him, and he wept. While we were like, no, we are going to connect in Jesus. You needed to come. Obviously, you're drinking because you're hurting, and he is hurting, right? But we're going to care for you.
The first 3 times I went to Grace Point is because I didn't get up that morning to go to church. I was still up from the night before, doing uppers, drinking, and me and my buddy are still awake. And I'm like, let's go to Grace Point. Let's check it out. Like someone I work with invited me.
Wow.
But first 3 times I was at Grace Point was because I was still awake. And then once you realize, and if your church isn't embracing these people, then shame on you, because people need to have a church that they can go to for help with anything, and that's Jesus. Yeah. And
right. I was talking to someone, and I said, so very early in my life, I'm an intellectual type teacher type guy. Okay. Yeah. And frankly, look, I feel like I can connect with anyone. I'm always friends with everyone in the church. Okay. I'm friends with the leaders. I'm friends with the janitor. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm friends with the people that do the finances, and I'm friends with the lady that just wants to hold the baby in the nursery. She happens to be my wife. Okay. And so that should not deter people from hearing what I have to say. So like, I just feel like I have this intellectual background, and yet I understand that we deeply need to connect with each other and care for each other. And I used to think that people changed just through teaching, like information was power. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like, actually, information's not power. Sir Francis Bacon said knowledge is power, but that's another matter. Okay? Yeah. That's back in my philosophy days. So I used to teach. And then I went back to the Bible, and I read the whole of the New Testament. I said, what is it that really helps people change? Just structurally, okay? It was being with Jesus, spending time with him. Yeah. In the fellowship of the saints. They devoted themselves to the word, to prayer, and to fellowship. And the breaking of the bread together. Yeah. Fellowship. That's iron sharpening iron, right? So then I got on this huge discipleship kick, and I still am on discipleship kick. Like, I think what you're doing with Fight Club is a version of discipleship. It's a vehicle of discipleship, okay? Yeah. So, because you're spending time with people, all right? And then more recently in my life, I have gone back and I've looked at Jesus, and I'm like, well, what was Jesus all about? He was always healing people. Yeah. Always healing people. And he was healing the destitute. He was healing the unclean, like prostitutes and lepers, right? And believe me, if they had narcotics or crack houses, Jesus would have went in there and healed people there too. Yeah. Right?
And if you don't think that you have the power to heal somebody, that's shame. That's, again, that you're thinking something, I'm not good enough, I'm not this, I'm not that. But the power of healing someone, it's inside of all of us. God is in us. Jesus is in us. We're from him. He's in us. And once you break through that barrier and realize that what I have in me, not anything else, just me. Through God, through me, I can actually heal people. And when you start to see that happen, it becomes so, you just want more of it.
Yeah.
Because you know it's real now. I'm seeing this happen,
right.
and it's working through me. I have the power of Christ in me.
Wow.
Yeah.
And let's be very careful here. So when you're talking like this, you're not talking about some innate power that's separated from the divine. You're talking about God, Christ, in through you.
Yes.
That his love and his spiritual presence is so prevalent in your life that you can go and you can literally bring his love and healing power to other people when you engage with them.
Oh, absolutely.
That's what you mean by that.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's what I thought you meant.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure for listeners, because there's a school of thought that says that everyone is divine and you just need to tap into that, and then that's your inner healing, right? And I think that that's a half-truth, right? And half-truths that are sold as whole truths are actually just a complete lie.
Yeah, I'm not a healer. I'm not going out.
Yeah, I know you don't think that, but I just want to make sure for our listeners, because you've said this repeatedly, and this is something, David, I really appreciate. You keep bringing us back to Jesus.
Yeah.
You say it's Christ. You're like, Fight Club, Fight Club. You're like, but it's Christ. Because Jesus is filling that up when we have connections with other men. That's super cool.
Well, I mean, my most of my life, I wasn't using the power of Christ. Like it's in us all the time. It's almost like I had it in a box. Like it's
interesting.
And it was there all the time, but I never even opened this box. I had this wonderful tool, and then you let Jesus out of the box.
Yeah.
I completely lost my train of thought.
That's okay.
But
it happens. Well, look, brother, you want to say anything more about clean? You talked about pure desire.
I do. If you're a man,
just talk about clean, and then we can wrap it up.
Okay. This book is a must-read for all men. It says, Clean, a proven plan for men committed to sexual integrity. This is going to make your relationship better with your family, with your wife, with your kids, with other men. People are going to learn from you. People are going to look up to you when you start using the tools in this book. Read this book.
Fantastic. David, thanks for coming out. It's been super cool to have you on the podcast.
It's been
awesome. Thank you also. I just want to put in recording, thank you for how you loved my son and my family. Like, you've made an impact. And you've made an impact in my life and now in my kids' lives.
Yeah.
And like, bro, may you be blessed in how you've served.
Well, I thank God for the opportunity. Yeah.
That's super cool. Well, hey, everyone, thanks so much for joining us for this podcast. Look, if you're listening to us on Spotify or YouTube or wherever you're checking us out, please be sure to give us a like, a thumbs up, share it with people. Definitely continue to keep coming back. We're going to have great content. We're going to keep getting awesome people like David Lachowicz on, talking about his experiences with men and Jesus and healing. And hey, until the next time we get together, keep your eyes on Jesus and let's follow him together. Amen.
Amen, brother.
Amen.